Growing up, there was a point where I lived next to, but not in, a cul-de-sac. Every day, I would spend my time playing in the cul-de-sac with other kids who actually did live there. Whether it was basketball, tag, riding bikes and skateboards, whatever it was, the cul-de-sac was something special. That's definitely a factor into why I love Ed, Edd, and Eddy. The feeling of being on the precipice of the rest of your life, with how forever those feelings would be. It felt like a lifetime, and now it's just a fleeting memory. Ed, Edd, and Eddy, however, brings me back to those days. Not for the schemes and the over-the-top cartoon violence, but just being in the mix of the cul-de-sac, even if I technically didn't live in it. Anyway, Ed, Edd, and Eddy is something we have discussed before. I've made my love for it very clear, and it's something I still return back to nearly on a weekly basis before I drift off to sleep at night. And one thing that I thought would be fun to talk about would be the way in which the show almost ended, came back with a few specials afterwards, another full season, and then a tiny part of a season counting as a supposed season 6. Oh, and of course, the movie The Big Picture Show. If you didn't catch all that, there's a bunch to go over there. But yeah, originally the finale of season 4 was planned to be the end of the show, and it's kinda grim. After that, they came back with a mixed variety of everything that made the ending of the series a weird, yet memorable time in cartoons. So let's look back on what could have been, what actually was, and how it all happened. So with Ed, Edd, and Eddy, I just got lost in how fascinating this whole ending debacle was, and I have enjoyed doing this shockingly weird way shows ended series, and I hope you have as well. So to start it off, let's take a look at the almost ending, season 4's finale, Take This Ed and Shove It. A 2-part episode taking up the full runtime rather than splitting it between 2 segments. The Eds, more specifically Eddy, find it hard coming to terms with all the kids are starting to grow up. I mean, check out Kevin's sick beard.
Pretty manly, huh?
So naturally, rather than dwell on more childish schemes, they all put on a scam career aptitude test of sorts, putting in motion career paths for the other kids. For a fee, of course.
And a small fee?
This, funny enough, works, and the Ed boys quickly spend that money that they earned on some jawbreakers. A nice rare win for them. Is what I would say if they didn't run into Dr. Naz, who knows the jawbreakers would be bad for their teeth and locks them away in her desk. See, I always knew career aptitude tests would lead to trouble. This then results in them stealing the desk and trying to safely take it back to Eddy's place and somehow get the jawbreakers out. We now enter into the second half of the episode where they're all still struggling to get inside the desk, and Double D ponders the excitement of his future and wants Eddy and Ed to think of theirs. But Eddy doesn't want to grow up. He doesn't want anything more than the life that he has now, and maybe a few jawbreakers to boot. But thanks to a freak Golfer Johnny incident, Eddy falls into a pit where a bunch of heavy objects fall on him, causing the screen to morph into something else as we hear Eddy's echoes of saying, "I never." When Eddy awakes, however, he is now an older version of himself, 90 years in the future as he mistakes himself for his own grandpa when looking in the mirror. Ed and Double D come over, old as well, while Eddy is having troubles coming to terms with being old. He finds the desk with the jawbreakers in them still locked up from back then, as everyone in the cul-de-sac is also in their senior years as well. Eddy reverts to trying to open the desk again, as when they do try, it ends up turning to dust. Eddy exclaims that he's just a kid as he repeatedly bashes himself in the face until he wakes up, back as a kid in his bed. Once he realizes he's back, he runs around in excitement. Ed finally got the desk open and they can all now enjoy the jawbreakers. He yells once more, "I don't ever want to grow up!" as we hard cut to 90 years in the future once more, as the Eds sit around playing cards and Eddy recounts all of these memories as just being stories. Unlike the other clip, this one seems to cement it as they are actually 90 years in the future, as after having a rousing laugh with friends one final time, wishes that he could be a kid again.
I still wish I was a kid!
Kind of grim, yet still a funny way to end the show on as originally intended. Trust me, I understand the fears of mortality and aging as well as letting life pass you by. It's a place that can get dark and something that causes nothing but anxiety when trying to understand that in which you are not yet, but still knowing it is coming. Having Eddy be our vessel into this existentialism is a smart choice because of his kid-like nature and dependence on his adolescence. All in all, it works in the spirit of what Ed, Edd, and Eddy was as a show to end something like this. With this. It also could have been slightly different too. Danny Antonucci, the creator of the show, showed off 2 deleted scenes a few years later at San Diego Comic-Con. One of the deleted scenes is an alternate take on when Eddy wakes up old for the first time and mistakes his mirror reflection for his grandpa saying, "Hey, Antonucci, wake me up!" After acknowledging Antonucci directly and offering him money to wake up from this nightmare, he reaches for his wallet only to find a jar of prunes. The second deleted scene gets a little bit more crazy. Now going to the scene when the desk turns to dust, Eddy this time starts to break down and cry over it. Lee Kanker then comes running to see what is going on, and then it's revealed that Eddy and Lee Kanker at some point got married and had a bunch of babies and spent their honeymoon at the junkyard. But it didn't just end right there, okay? Ed married May Kanker and Double D married Marie Kanker. These two scenes are pretty funny and would work fine as an extended cut of this episode. Regardless, I am happy that we were told about them and saw what could have been. It's a rare treat to see that. But once again, as much as this was supposed to be the finale of the show in general, it wasn't. While that originally was intended to be the end of the series in 2004, the show was still in peak popularity. The fans wanted more and so did the network. So that's exactly what would happen. 2 new seasons would be ordered as well as 3 holiday-themed specials to start releasing as soon as the month after the show was supposed to end. With Jingle Jingle Jangle, a Christmas special which we already covered here on the channel last year, a Valentine's Day special titled Hanky Panky Hullabaloo, and the final special, Boo Ha Ha, centered around Halloween, with the latter being one of Antonucci's favorite Ed and Eddy episodes to work on. Now, there was another special, but in relation to the timeline, we will mention that a little bit later in the video. With more Ed and Eddy on the horizon with specials filling in the gap between season 4 and now the new season 5, the future couldn't look better for the Ed boys, could it? It is now November 2005, and all the specials had recently finished coming out, and season 5 is here. 12 episodes as opposed to the usual 13 would fill the season, but something was different. Something was just a bit off. One thing that made Ed and Eddy unique was that there were essentially no adults fully seen in the show. It was just the kids at the cul-de-sac with parents having a presence mainly felt off-screen, that do cause certain worries or actions of the kids on-screen. With the show being thought to take place primarily in the summer as quoted by Antonucci himself when speaking about the lack of adults, that's intentional too. Throughout the long days of summer, you simply didn't see anyone else's parents about, and sometimes you didn't even see your own. It simply did just have a specific feeling to it all. But when season 5 comes around and we get to the episode aptly titled, Out with the Old, In with the Ed, we enter upon the cul-de-sac once more where Eddy tries to keep the summer going as he spends his time trying to convince everyone that the summer has not ended yet. Only problem is that it has, and school starts back up tomorrow. And once tomorrow comes, we are at school and the Eds have to deal with being in different homerooms. Another thing that was out with the old and in with the new was the process of how the show was made itself. The show had originally been done using traditional cell animation, something we covered on the channel in my original Ed and Eddy video. But now the series would transition from those techniques to digital ink and paint. Throughout season 5, we would follow the Ed boys as they deal with school rather than the scheme of the day in the cul-de-sac. From report cards to football, the focus clearly shifted. While there were still episodes that had nothing to do with school sprinkled in, it definitely gave the show a newer feeling. I'm all for trying new things in fear of something great becoming stale. So even if it was a bit different for this season, I didn't hate it. It's not my favorite season of the show, but I appreciate the effort in at least going for something different. Reception-wise, it did take its toll. That's all subjective though, but there was a noticeable decrease in the love for the season compared to the original 4. Now, as far as season 6 of the show, I'd ask you, what season 6? The random singular episode that makes up all of season 6, or the alien special that we're about to cover that some may count as an episode for season 6. I'm not kidding. Season 6 is literally just the last episode. That technical final regular episode features the segments May I Have This Ed and Look Before You Ed. The first being about the Peach Creek Junior High School dance, and the second part focusing on Jimmy and his safety club. For sure, that would be a pretty lackluster note to go out on, especially compared to how season 4 was about to end, but it wasn't the end. It was the end of the show, sure, but the series had a final card to play before the Ed boys sang farewell. Back in 2006, it was announced that a feature-length 90-minute special was in the works. As the production of that continued to get pushed back as the show was taking precedence, Antonucci and his team had some tough choices to make, ultimately deciding one episode into season 6 that in order to put all of their focus for this 90-minute special, they would need to step away from making season 6. Thus why it ended so abruptly. We'll touch slightly more on that a little bit later. This 90-minute feature-length special would finally come to fruition in 2009 as Ed, Edd n Eddy's Big Picture Show, a television movie event that would serve now as the true finale to the beloved series. Now, before we get into the Big Picture Show, I wanted to talk about the weird alien invasion special I've mentioned a few times here. In 2007, Cartoon Network started a special TV crossover event that would span through many of the popular franchises at the time, throughout the month of May, right around 15 years ago right now. Wow, time is just flying. I vividly remember when all of this was actually airing on TV. This storyline regarding the aliens weaved its way through Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, My Gym Partner's a Monkey, Camp Lazlo, The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, and of course, Ed, Edd n Eddy. Now, for the proper order to watch them, technically Ed, Edd n Eddy would be listed as Part 2 and titled The Eds Are Coming, and would focus on the kids of the cul-de-sac being weary of potential aliens wreaking havoc, with Rolf being involved, as well as by the end of it, the whole cul-de-sac getting ripped out of the ground and taken to outer space. It's a strange little episode that culminates inside of the Billy and Mandy special, the 5th part and final part of the event, where at the end it's cameo galore after the day is kind of saved. And there's a lot of cheese. In fact, the whole event was full of cheese. Yes, also this cheese, but cheese in general. Apparently the original plan was that Kraft Cheese was sponsoring this big event, but pulled out before the airing, so now there's just a bunch of episodes revolving around cheese randomly. This information coming from the creator of Billy and Mandy, Maxwell Adams. So thanks for that. What a weird concept, but a fun one.
There is no cheese here.
It's the Cheese Reaper!
Where does cheese have to go?
Also, the little connections between them were cool, like in My Gym Partner's a Monkey, where the cul-de-sac being abducted makes front page news. And is that Napoleon Dynamite?
Trying to use a local ham radio to contact deep space.
Cartoon Network really like milking this joke. Either way, this episode would be counted as a random honorary season 6 episode, and this whole invaded 5-part event was pretty fun. Maybe we should cover that sometime soon here on the channel.
I have difficulties with abandonment. It's good to be back. It's like underwear straight from the dryer.
Alright, the big finale to Ed, Edd n Eddy, the Big Picture Show. Going back to this replacing season 6 of the show, Cartoon Network supported Antonucci's and the team's decision to shift their efforts and focus from the show to the movie. During San Diego Comic-Con in 2007, we learned some plot details as the movie would have a focus on Eddy's brother, someone in the series we have heard a lot about, from the room in Eddy's house to the one-off lines about him. He was an off-screen character who had an extreme presence looming in the background. We also learned that this would be the official end to the show now. The movie would then finally premiere on Cartoon Network November 8th, 2009, literally starting the film in the middle of another Ed Boys scheme, which of course caused things to go terribly wrong, and the cul-de-sac was never the same. After getting a good look at a quiet cul-de-sac, we quickly see the aftermath of some horrific event, clearly being a result of the Eds, as all the Eds are frantically packing their things, being extremely paranoid like Ray Liotta in Goodfellas. The viewer still unaware of what really happened, the trio are clearly running from something major that they have caused, as they sneak into Eddy's brother's room, steal the parked car that he's had in there, and hit the road to escape the mob of angry kids that are shown to be badly injured and affected by whatever they had done. Rolf literally has a huge piece missing from his torso. Must have been one heck of a scheme. Barely making their way out of the neighborhood, blasting off like Team Rocket, all we are left with is the aftermath of the cul-de-sac destruction, and Ed's now on the road to find his older brother for protection against the incoming onslaught of Kevin, Naz, Rolf, Johnny, and Plank. The journey that they embark on really tests the relationship of the trio, and Eddy especially, with him being the catalyst of most everything that has ever affected anyone, as well as stretching the truth and outright lying about everything. His inconsistencies finally catch up with him as he doesn't know where his brother actually lives, nor the person he portrays him to be to his friends, or to anyone for that matter. Truly breaking down Eddy as a character, why he is the way he is, and him coming to terms with himself. We do find his brother, even at first being the brother Eddy has always bragged about, but we quickly find out that the relationship between Eddy and his brother is far from those tales. Everyone from the cul-de-sac is left with their jaws agape as Eddy's brother is physically and emotionally abusive towards Eddy. But the revenge that all the kids wanted to get on the Eds, and more specifically Eddy, isn't met with joy at this moment, seeing what his brother has done and is doing to them. Despite all their differences, they stand up to Eddy's brother in an attempt to defend Eddy. But before before anything could happen, Ed knocks him out with the trailer door. Eddy here, in his most vulnerable moment, opens up about his sorrow towards what he has done. Not just for the stuff that had happened to cause all of this, but for everything ever. All the schemes, scams, and pranks from the past. Going further, he admits his lies that he told about his brother throughout the years as it being a form of social acceptance from his peers. All of the kids forgive Eddy, Double D, and Ed and embrace them now as friends, uniting the cul-de-sac. That is, until Johnny shows up late as Melon Boy, not hearing or seeing anything, and begins to attack the Eds. Luckily, the other kids got their back and attacked Johnny for attacking their friends.
Sorry about that.
Touching. Afterwards, they all head over to Kevin's for some jawbreakers, seeing a reprisal of Your Friends Are There to Help You from earlier in the show, as Double D places a label on a black screen saying, The End. And just before we truly end, we get a post-credit scene teasing the return of Johnny as Melon Boy ready for his revenge. The movie does everything you'd want from an Ed, Edd and Eddy movie or finale. A satisfying end that directly impacts the characters in ways that elevate a long time coming payoff. The focus shifting to making this movie over a season 6 or trying to do both at once was the smart decision, as this film is so fine-tuned with the precision of Danny Antonucci and the team working on it that it didn't just benefit from all the attention focused on it, it needed the attention focused on it for it to turn out this good. The journey they take in this film isn't about Eddy finding his brother, it's Eddy finding himself as to not become his brother, the person he's idoled his whole life, all wrapping in the fun of the others from the cul-de-sac and then figuring out their own situations as well. For the other Eds, Double D finds the strength to kind of loosen up a bit and even stand up for him and his friends, even if it may be in the face of getting hurt over it. Ed, well, he just has a good time.
You bet your sweet bippy I did.
And does something that actually helps out. Thanks for taking the bullet out of that door. It's a beautiful way to wrap up a series that meant so much to me and so many others. I would also like to add earlier on the scene in which Eddy and Double D get into a boiling point argument, nearly causing them to end their friendship. We finally see Eddy start to break, sharing his emotions and taking the blame for what had happened instead of passing the buck as he usually tends to do. It's a nice character moment, my personal favorite from the movie, as it diverts from the friends break up and get back together by the end trope by having the characters deal with these emotions and problems right then and there. It felt vulnerable and impactful towards who these characters are and how they view each other. I do find the whole ending of the show particularly fascinating. From having an original end that felt kind of bleak to seemingly coming back instantly with a different in style season 5, followed up by a season 6 that contained an episode, to then finally ending with a movie that perfectly wrapped up the series in such a fantastic way. The road to that movie ending may have been a bit rocky, but the journey that it took and that end result made it so memorable. I have gushed about this show so many times on this channel at this point, and I am sure I will gush about it many more times in the future. But for now, I'm glad we could all spend some time today and look back at the shockingly weird way Ed, Edd and Eddy ended. I definitely want to know your thoughts on all of this in the comments, as well as let me know other fun, weird, or interesting ways shows have ended. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more content like this. I'll be back with another video soon, but until then, later.